Hello everyone, welcome to my presentation today. My name is Sam Lane and I'm presenting my Capstone project for EA521. So the goal of this project is to help a client move to a net zero lifestyle. So this client is moving from Charleston, South Carolina to North Carolina. They're pretty open to where they want to live in North Carolina. They have said that they want to move to the western part of the state. So the goal of the project is to determine the ideal North Carolina location for their desired lifestyle. And then once that location is determined, perform a site assessment for a specific energy system or systems that will meet the client's energy needs. And then lastly, we're going to analyze the feasibility of the system, both economically and politically. So energy needs. So obviously this family is moving to a new home, so they're not 100% sure what their energy needs are going to be, but they do have a goal. So their current energy needs at their current home in Charleston, South Carolina, is about 654 kilowatt hours per month, or 7,854 kilowatt hours per year. So the client plans to maintain that same energy profile for their next home. Of note, they also use a gas furnace at their current home, but they do plan to use some green building strategies. They plan to build their next home in North Carolina to eliminate that portion of their energy needs. So they won't be using a gas furnace at their next house. It'll be all electric, and they want to supply all that electricity with renewable energy sources. So in terms of renewable system options, so the client has already decided that they will install a 5 kilowatt solar system that will provide 6,900 kilowatt hours per year. So if you remember back on the previous slide, sorry, they need to produce 7,854 kilowatt hours per year. So that leaves them with 954 kilowatt hours per year remaining. And so there's three other options to supply that 954 kilowatt hours is wind, hydro, and biomass. And then obviously for these systems, we're talking about small scale residential systems. So, those micro hydro plants, maybe, a wood stove for biomass, and then a very small a wind turbine there. All right, so of those three energy choices, the best choice for this client is going to be hydro. So this client actually wants to move to the western part of the state, and they've actually been offered land with a creek on it already. So that makes that land perfect for hydropower. Even if they didn't have the land already with the creek, hydropower is going to be great, especially in western North Carolina, due to abundant resources, rivers, streams, creeks, low cost, durability, and the negligible impact on the environment and wildlife. All right, so why not wind or biomass? We talked about some of the advantages of hydropower, but wind and biomass also offer some advantages. But in this case, for biomass, the client does not plan to. He doesn't want to be outside cutting down trees, filling up a wood stove, and then also replanting those trees. If you want to make biomass carbon neutral, it's not even if you weren't burning trees, whatever you're burning or you're fermenting or digesting to make energy or heat, you're gonna have to replace that to make it carbon neutral. And the client's not interested in investing that time. Wind could be a great option, but there's not a lot of wind in this part of the state. There are some very small areas, close in Watauga County, for instance, comes to mind. But if the client's not living exactly in the right spot, wind's not going to be, a great option in this geographic area. So site selection. So like we talked about earlier, this family is looking in Yadkin County, North Carolina, to build their new home. They already have some land available, and this land happens to have a creek running through it. So this is in Hamptonville, North Carolina, which is in Yadkin County. And you can see on the map here, we're located northwest North Carolina, so close to the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains. So we do have some elevation gains, which is good for head of the creek when you're talking about power production. And then the build site is a little bit off, but it's easily going to be easy to route the power lines up to the build site. So talk about the site assessment. So these are all estimates. So the creek head and the creek minimum creek flow were estimated really using trivial methods. This is just kind of to get an estimate. Definitely before we started building the project, we would have a more substantial study of making sure we have that head completely accurate, and then also creek flows. Is going to change seasonally and throughout the day, so making sure we have a good understanding of what that's going to be. But here for the estimates, we have creek head is 35 feet. The required power is going to be 110 watts, and that's based on the 954 kilowatt hours per year that the client needs. An efficiency of the system is going to be 65%. That's pretty standard for a micro hydro plant. And you plug that into our equation, power is going to be equal to the product of the head and flow. And we get into a required flow of 26 gallons per minute, which just so happens to be about 25% of the minimum creek flow. So 25%, you want to keep it less than 50% of your minimum creek flow to not have an impact on the creek, the ecosystems living in the water. And that's going to be 25%, so you're going to have a negligible impact on the ecosystem there. So it looks like this creek is going to be able to supply all the 954 kilowatt hours per year that the family needs pretty easily. So when we talk about the technology, just keep it simple here, but we do have a diagram, and we have a report that's going to detail out all of the different systems that are going, or all the different components that are going to make up the system. But big takeaways, we have the intake, where the water is going to come in, you're going to filter it out, go through the penstock. It's going to go down through the nozzle to the impulse turbine, and that nozzle is going to supply the appropriate amount of water to the turbine. We'll hook it up to a 48-volt generator, which will supply power to the home, those 954 kilowatt hours. So policy consideration. So there's not a lot of policy that's going to help out the client here. North Carolina does have a financing program, but we are going to recommend the client stays away from that. But there are good net metering and interconnection laws that'll allow the client to be hooked up to the grid, and supply power to their home and to the grid. So, lastly, we have financial considerations. So the average cost of energy in North Carolina is going to be about 11 cents per kilowatt hour, and that's going to yield a savings from a micro hydro plant of about $107 a year, or about $2,700 over the system lifetime. So we talk about $2,700. The system cost is actually the low end of the system cost will be about $4,000. So does the system still make sense? So for this, we kind of got to think. We're kind of in a hard spot here in that we only have about that 954 kilowatt hours per year is a pretty low number. So when you talk about scaling up a system, the bigger scale it is, the more it's going to be easier to make it economically feasible. So in this case, we are going to be paying more than you would just pay from purchasing the energy from the utility. But there's some other pluses. So we're talking about here, $1,300 over a 25-year lifespan. Not a lot of money, especially when the client's planning on building a whole new home. But it's still something to consider. And then secondly, the client can't control the cost of electricity. So say the client has no clue what electricity will cost 20 years down the line, but they do know exactly how much this micro hydro plant is going to cost. So it kind of gives them some stability, and then paid up front, you don't have to worry about it anymore. So it does make sense. It makes sense they're going to meet all their energy needs. They'll be able to meet that net zero lifestyle, and it'll be a small cost. So that does it for the presentation. I think this is this micro hydro system will be great for the family or the client. And thanks for listening.